So imagine you wake up with like just an agonizing, blinding toothache.
Oh, the absolute worst.
Right. The kind of pain that radiates through your jaw, gives you a migraine, makes it, impossible to sleep or eat or even think straight.
Yeah, completely debilitating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now imagine you actually have the money for a dentist. You live right down the street from one.
Okay.
You fully respect modern medicine and, unequivocally that the doctor can fix it in 20 minutes. But you refuse to go.
Just completely refuse.
Yeah, you refuse purely out of spite.
Yeah.
You choose to sit in your room in agony, groaning and making yourself and like everyone around you completely miserable.
Right.
Just to prove to the universe that you can. Just to prove that you are not a machine programmed to simply seek comfort.
It sounds insane, but it happens.
It really does. Welcome to today's Deep Dive, airing on Sunday, May 3rd, 2026. Today, we are exploring why human beings deliberately, intentionally, and sometimes catastrophically self-sabotage.
It's such a heavy, relevant topic.
It is, and our sources for today are this really curated stack of in-depth literary and philosophical video essays. They're all focused on breaking down one monumental work, which is Fyodor Dostoevsky's 1864 masterpiece, Notes from Underground.
Such a brilliant piece of literature.
Truly. And to be clear to you listening, we are not just doing like a dry book report today. The mission here is to explore this text because it acts as a terrifyingly accurate mirror for modern alienation, the burden of overthinking, and that weird, paradoxical desire to ruin our own lives just to prove we have free will.
It truly is a mirror.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating here is that the reflection it casts is one we are, still desperately trying to avoid looking at today.
Oh, absolutely.
To really grasp why this book hits so hard and why the psychology of its unnamed narrator feels so uncomfortably familiar right now, we have to understand the historical context.
Right, the philosophical absolute that Dostoevsky was reacting against.
Exactly. This entire text is a violent, almost desperate rebellion against the prevailing Enlightenment ideals of the 19th century.
The idea that humans are perfectly logical.
Yes. At that time, European intellectuals had this supreme, almost religious confidence in rationality. The prevailing belief, or really the dogma, was that human beings are fundamentally rational creatures.
Like we're basically just complex calculators.
Right. The theory was that if we simply educate people enough, if we use science and logic to show them what their true self-interest is, they will naturally, inevitably choose what is best for them.
Which sounds great on paper, right?
It does. They thought people would always move toward progress, harmony, health, and happiness. But Dostoevsky looked at that utopian mathematical formula and then looked at actual messy, contradictory human behavior and essentially just laughed in the face of the Enlightenment.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the way Dostoevsky sets up this counter-argument is completely brilliant.
It really is.
He doesn't write some dry, academic, philosophical treatise. He writes what is essentially a psychological thriller, but the twist is that the villain, the victim, and the detective trying to solve the crime are all the exact same person, all trapped in one mind.
Exactly. They are all trapped together inside one tiny, damp room, entirely inside their own head. He introduces us to this protagonist, who we call the Underground Man. He's like this unnamed 40-year-old retired civil servant.
Living in squalor in St. Petersburg.
Yeah. And right from the opening lines, he just shatters the illusion of the rational human. He just comes right out and announces, I am a sick man. I am a spiteful man.
It's such a striking opening.
And he brings up that liver pain, right? He believes his liver is diseased, but he refuses to see a doctor. Not because he's afraid of them, but because he actively wants to assert his own irrationality out of pure spite.
Exactly. He is intentionally choosing to suffer. And this immediately attacks that 19th century premise of rational self-interest.
Because he knows he's only hurting himself.
Right. He knows he can't harm the doctors by not going to them. He's taking all the damage. Which brings us to the core concept of the underground.
Right. What does that actually mean? Well, the sources make a crucial point here. We have to understand that the underground is not just a physical basement apartment.
It's not just his gloomy room.
No, it's an ontological state.
Yeah.
It is a total philosophical withdrawal from the values, the relationships, and the logic of normal society.
So he's just completely disconnected.
Yes, it's a state of being fundamentally alienated from the surface world, where everyone else seems to be happily playing by the rules of society.
And the mechanism driving him into this underground is what the sources call hyperconsciousness as a disease.
Yes, disease is the perfect word for it.
Because it isn't just that he's smart, you
Yeah.
know, it's that he suffers from an over-awareness that utterly paralyzes him.
Paralysis is exactly what it is. Dostoevsky sets up a brilliant dichotomy here between the underground man and what he terms the natural man.
The man of action, right.
Exactly. The sources describe the natural man almost like a bull. He might be somewhat limited in his intellect, his worldview might be quite simple, but he is highly effective in the real world.
He gets things done.
Right. When the natural man is insulted or when he perceives an injustice, he just lowers his horns and charges.
He doesn't second-guess it.
Not at all. He takes revenge immediately and decisively because he fundamentally, unquestioningly believes he is right. There is zero daylight between his thought and his action.
Whereas the underground man calls himself a conscious mouse.
A conscious mouse.
He's entirely different. If he gets insulted, he can't just take revenge. He overthinks the insult from like 1,000 different agonizing angles.
He questions everything.
Yeah, he questions if he actually deserved it. Then he questions the cosmic fairness of revenge itself. Then he analyzes the biological and sociological reasons why the other person insulted him in the first place.
It's an endless loop.
It really is. And because he follows every single thought down this infinite regression of motives, he realizes that no one is truly to blame for anything because everything is just the result of the laws of nature.
And
Ultimately, he does nothing. He just scurries back into his hole.
Precisely. The hyperconsciousness acts as a solvent that just dissolves all conviction.
That's a great way to put it.
The bull can act because the bull believes in a solid foundation of truth or justice. But the conscious mouse thinks so deeply that he sees through the foundation, realizing there's nothing solid there at all.
So he just sinks into this incredibly toxic mix.
Yeah, intense self-hatred for his own cowardice, while simultaneously clinging to the belief that he is intellectually superior to the bull who actually did something.
I want to pause on that because the psychology there is so incredibly relevant to you listening right now and to me today.
Oh, completely.
Think about how often we use our intelligence as a shield against action. It's not just, analysis paralysis, like drafting a simple email to your boss, overthinking every single word, imagining wildly disproportionate negative reactions, and just staring at a blank screen.
Right, paralyzed by your own intellect.
It's deeper than that. It's the modern condition of being so hyper-aware of the complexities of the world, so plugged into every possible outcome and criticism, that we convince ourselves taking any definitive action is either naive or problematic.
So we do nothing.
Exactly. We sit in our metaphorical undergrounds, scrolling, critiquing the people who are actually out there doing things, the bulls, and we comfort ourselves by saying, well, they're just stupid. I'm too smart to participate in that.
Our awareness becomes a prison.
It really does. Have you ever felt that? Trapped in an echo chamber of your own thoughts where your intelligence actually makes you less capable of acting?
That is a phenomenal translation of the condition. And Dostoevsky is arguing that this extreme level of consciousness, which society, often praises as a high intellectual achievement, isn't a gift at all.
It's a curse.
It's a profound affliction. It cuts you off from the flow of actual lived human experience. And this affliction is what leads the underground man to attack the biggest, most sacred philosophical target of his day.
Rational egoism. Let's dig into this, because this is where the philosophy turns into an all-out war.
It really does.
The sources talk extensively about Dostoevsky's reaction to a very popular utopian novel of the time by Nikolai Chernyshevsky called What Is to Be Done?
Yes, a hugely influential book back then.
Right. And the prevailing theory of rational egoism was essentially a mathematical approach to human happiness. The idea was that if we just gather enough data, if we calculate exactly what makes humans happy and structure society accordingly, we can build a flawless, frictionless world.
A perfect utopia.
And the ultimate symbol of this perfect future was the Crystal Palace.
Yes, the Crystal Palace. Historically, this was a real, massive glass and iron structure built in London in 1851 for the Great Exhibition.
Like a giant greenhouse.
Exactly. It was an architectural marvel. But for the rationalist, it became a powerful metaphor. It represented the pinnacle of scientific progress, total predictability, and the triumph of reason over nature.
Everything perfectly planned out.
Right. It was the promise of a perfectly engineered human existence. And the underlying mathematical metaphor the rationalists use to support this, which the underground man utterly obsesses over, is the equation 2 + 2 = 4.
Oh man, he talks about 2 + 2 = 4 constantly. It's like his white whale.
Because for the rationalists, 2 + 2 = 4 is the ultimate comforting truth. It represents the immutable laws of nature, the undeniable facts of science upon which we can build this perfect society.
It's safe.
But for the underground man, 2 + 2 = 4 is a literal death sentence.
Wow, really?
Yes, it is the stone wall he keeps violently crashing his head against. Why? Because if human behavior, human desires, and human choices can eventually be calculated and predicted as flawlessly as 2 + 2 = 4, then human beings are no longer individuals.
They're just machines.
Exactly. If everything is just an algorithm, then we don't really exist as agents. We're just waiting for a scientific formula to tell us what to desire. We are no different from organ stops or piano keys being pressed by the laws of nature.
And he absolutely loathes that idea.
He despises it.
The existential dread of that determinism is suffocating to him. So he counters it with this wild, deeply unsettling philosophical argument. He claims that humans will intentionally choose chaos, suffering, or outright destruction just to prove they are not machines.
It's his ultimate rebellion.
Yeah. He says that if you were to actually place humanity into this perfect utopia, this crystal palace where every need is met, humanity would intentionally stick its tongue out at it. Or worse, we would smash the glass walls just to assert our independent choice.
This raises an important question, and it's the absolute crux of his existential rebellion. Think about the mechanics of what he's suggesting.
Okay.
If the price of perfect, guaranteed, scientifically engineered happiness is giving up our unpredictability, giving up our free will, is it worth it?
The underground man screams no.
From the bottom of his lungs, he elevates the absurdity of 2 + 2 = 5 into a battle cry for human freedom.
But wait, 2 + 2 = 5 is just objectively wrong. How is that a battle cry?
Does 2 + 2 = 5 make any logical, mathematical sense?
No, obviously not.
Of course not. It's absurd. But having the right to choose the absurd, having the sheer, stubborn, irrational agency to declare it and live by it is what makes us human.
Oh, I see.
Not a mathematical output. If you only ever choose what the equation tells you is best, you are a piano key. If you choose 2 + 2 = 5, you are asserting that you are a conscious agent capable of defying the universe itself.
That is wild.
Dostoevsky is warning us through this character that freedom, even destructive, irrational, painful freedom, is valued by humans far more than guaranteed happiness.
You see this psychological mechanism play out all the time today, just, on a smaller scale.
Oh, definitely.
Think about people who self-sabotage perfectly good, healthy relationships, or they blow up a secure, well-paying job for no logical reason.
Just out of nowhere.
Precisely because they feel trapped by the perfection and the routine of it. The security starts to feel like a cage. They start craving the chaos of their own agency.
They want to break the glass.
Exactly. They would rather steer their own ship directly into the rocks and watch it sink than be a passive, coddled passenger on a smooth, pre-programmed cruise where they have no control over the destination. The destruction proves they are at the wheel.
The destruction is the proof of agency.
Yeah.
And Dostoevsky takes this idea of craving chaos even further into a realm that feels deeply uncomfortable, which brings us back to the bizarre concept of finding pleasure in pain.
Right, the toothache.
Yes. The sources spent a lot of time analyzing the underground man's metaphor of the toothache, which we touched on briefly at the start, but we need to really examine the mechanics of it.
The educated modern man with the terrible toothache who just groans continuously day and night, highly theatrically around his entire family.
Right. And we have to ask, why does he groan? What is the actual mechanism there?
To get attention.
Well, the analysis reveals it's a malicious pleasure. The man with the toothache knows his groaning doesn't cure the physical pain. He also knows it is deeply aggravating to his family, who are losing sleep and becoming miserable. Existentially, the physical pain of the toothache is a reminder of his utter helplessness against that stone wall of the laws of nature. Biology is inflicting pain on him, and he cannot wish it away.
He's a victim of his own nerves.
Exactly. But by weaponizing his groaning, he turns his passive suffering into an active exertion of power over his family.
Hold on, I want to jump in here and just admit I'm a bit confused.
Sure, go ahead.
If he's groaning to get a kick out of annoying his family, isn't he still just doing what makes him happy?
Ah, I see what you're saying.
Like, how is that any different from the rational egoism Dostoevsky is attacking? Isn't he still just maximizing his own twisted version of utility?
That is a phenomenal question, and it strikes right at the heart of Dostoevsky's paradox. Addressing you, the listener, this is exactly where the philosophy gets incredibly nuanced.
Okay, lay it on me.
You're right that he is getting something out of it, but the utility he's pursuing completely defies the rational egoist's definition of utility.
Because it's not actually making him healthy or wealthy.
Exactly. Rational egoism posits that human beings inherently seek things that promote health, wealth, harmony, and peace. The underground man is pursuing the exact opposite. He is protecting and weaponizing his suffering because he believes suffering is the sole origin of consciousness.
Wait, the sole origin of consciousness, meaning without pain, we wouldn't even know we exist.
Precisely. Think about it. When your body is perfectly healthy, you don't even notice it. You don't feel your liver or your teeth. You just exist in a state of unthinking flow.
That's true. You only notice your body when something hurts.
Right. It is only when there is pain, when there is friction, that you become hyper-aware of yourself.
Yeah.
Without the friction of pain, he argues, there is no self-reflection.
Wow.
He guards his pain fiercely, not because it makes him happy in any conventional sense, but because it proves he exists as an independent conscious entity separate from the universe.
So the groaning is his proof of life.
Yes, by weaponizing his groaning, he forces the world to acknowledge his existence.
It's like a dark, twisted version of Descartes. Not, I think, therefore I am, but I suffer, therefore I am.
That is perfectly put.
He grips onto his pain because the pain gives him a narrative where he is the main character. To him, that visceral, agonizing reality is so much more human than the artificial, calculated happiness promised by the Society of the Crystal Palace.
It's a defense mechanism for his very soul. But, as the novel demonstrates, living this way entirely in your head has devastating consequences when you actually have to interact with the physical world.
When theory meets reality.
Exactly. The sources highlight how Dostoevsky shifts the book from the heavy philosophical arguments of the first half into the narrative second half, which is called Apropos of the Wet Snow.
Right, which takes place earlier in his life.
Yes, 16 years earlier when the underground man was younger, and we get to see what happens when these grand theories of his try to walk down the street.
And it is an absolute train wreck. Let's look at the tavern incident, because this perfectly illustrates the gap between his towering intellectual ego and his pathetic reality.
Yes, the infamous shoulder bump incident.
It's so cringy.
It is. The underground man is in a crowded tavern. He's standing near a billiard table, just blocking the way. And a tall, imposing, confident military officer, a perfect specimen of a natural man we talked about, needs to get past him.
And what does the officer do?
Well, he doesn't speak to him. He doesn't insult him. He doesn't challenge him to a fight to move him out of the way. He simply places his hands on the underground man's shoulders, physically picks him up, moves him aside like a piece of furniture, and walks on without a single word.
He just completely repositions him.
Yes, silently.
And the metaphysical devastation this causes the underground man is just unbelievable. He spends pages and pages agonizing over this. But why? Why does this break his brain so completely?
Because of the mechanism of recognition.
Yeah.
As the sources point out, being punched in the face would have actually been a profound validation of his existence.
Because it means he matters.
Right. If the officer had hit him, it would mean the officer recognized him as a human being, as an obstacle, as an enemy worthy of anger and engagement. But being moved, silently, implies he is a non-entity.
Like moving a chair.
Exactly. He's an inanimate object. Indifference is the ultimate erasure of identity.
So, because he's a conscious mouse, he descends into absolute obsession.
Only upset.
He spends, like, literally years plotting his revenge. But his revenge isn't challenging the officer to a duel or a fight. That would be the action of a natural man.
Way too direct for him.
Yeah. Instead, his grand revenge plot is to walk down the fashionable Nevsky Prospect, the main promenade in St. Petersburg, and bump shoulders with the officer without stepping aside.
That is the entire master plan.
To not yield the sidewalk.
And the preparations he makes for this absurd plan highlight the tragicomedy of his alienation.
The fur collar.
Yes. He realizes his clothes are too shabby to bump shoulders with a high-ranking officer. He thinks the officer will just see a peasant and not register the philosophical weight of the bump.
Which is hilarious.
So he borrows money he absolutely cannot afford, just to buy a slightly better, more respectable fur collar for his coat.
Just for this one moment.
He goes to the avenue repeatedly. He studies the officer's walking patterns. He measures his own steps. He practices his facial expressions in the mirror to make sure he looks completely nonchalant and equal in status.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because he is literally rehearsing a sidewalk collision. It is the definition of overthinking.
It really is.
And then the climax finally arrives. He sees the officer coming. He braces himself. He closes his eyes. He refuses to yield, and they bump shoulders.
It's a big moment.
And what happens, the officer doesn't even notice. He just stumbles slightly and keeps walking right past him, completely oblivious to this monumental, life-defining clash of titans that just occurred.
Just brushes right past.
And yet, the underground man celebrates it. He feels this massive, triumphant victory of his dignity.
It is an entirely hollow triumph. The entire war was fought, won, and lost entirely in isolation, inside his own mind. The officer never even knew there was a battle.
I want to use an analogy here because this feels exactly like the modern phenomenon of parasocial conflict.
Oh, that's a great connection.
Think about how often people today construct these elaborate, high-stakes arguments in their own heads with a stranger on the internet. You see a post that makes you mad. You spend 3 days writing and rewriting a devastating counterargument in your notes app.
Oh, I've seen people do this.
You imagine the stranger's humiliation. You are sweating with adrenaline, your heart rate is up, your entire emotional state is being dictated by someone who doesn't even know you exist.
That's exhausting.
We build whole universes of conflict where we are the righteous main character and the other person is just living their life completely oblivious.
That is a perfect parallel. It illustrates the tragedy of living entirely in the underground. He desperately wants to impact the world, to force the world to recognize his existence. But his hyperconsciousness keeps him sealed inside a solipsistic bubble.
He can't actually connect.
He cannot connect. And this desperate, pathological need for recognition leads directly into the next major narrative set piece, which is the disastrous farewell dinner.
Oh man, this scene is agonizing to read. The narrative moves to a dinner party that the underground man completely forces his way into.
He invites himself.
Yeah, it's a farewell dinner for an old schoolmate named Zverkov. Now, Zverkov is everything the underground man is not, but desperately wishes he could be, while simultaneously claiming to despise him.
A classic contradiction.
Zverkov is a successful military officer, confident, wealthy, socially adept, but ultimately entirely shallow and conventional.
This dinner exposes the painful, widening gap between the underground man's internal fantasy life and his external reality.
All right.
Internally, he reads European romantic literature. He imagines himself as a grand, noble, Byronic hero. He fantasizes about having a dramatic falling out with these men at the dinner and then generously forgiving them, awing them with his towering intellect and his profound moral superiority.
But externally,
in the real world, he is a petty, resentful, socially awkward man in shabby clothes whom everyone ignores.
and they do ignore him, brutally. At the dinner, he is seated with Zverkov and 3 other old classmates, and they treat him like a ghost.
They barely acknowledge him.
They talk over him about things he doesn't understand or care about.
Yeah.
When he tries to engage, he has these serious, aggressive, overly intense philosophical outbursts.
He just kills the mood.
Completely. And they just look at him, laugh awkwardly, and treat him with this polite, devastating condescension. They don't even hate him enough to argue with him. They just pity him and find him annoying.
And how does he respond to this indifference? What is the mechanism of his rebellion here?
It's so embarrassing.
To assert his dominance, to prove to them that he is a brilliant, independent mind who doesn't need their approval, he does something incredibly bizarre and uncomfortable.
He starts pacing.
Yes. He pushes his chair back from the table, and he aggressively paces back and forth behind their chairs for 3 hours.
3 hours.
3 hours of stomping back and forth, from the table to the stove and back, while they talk, drink, and completely ignore him.
Trying to look tough.
He's trying to look imposing, detached, and philosophically superior, but he actually looks like a pathetic child throwing a silent tantrum. He is physically manifesting his alienation.
The cognitive dissonance here is staggering. It's the tragedy of desiring validation from the exact people you claim to despise.
Yes, exactly.
He mocks the natural man. He calls them stupid, sheep-like, and shallow, but he is literally pacing holes in the floorboards begging for their attention. If he truly despised them, he would just leave.
But he can't.
Because without their gaze, without their recognition, he doesn't exist. He needs them to see him rejecting them.
That's the paradox. You can extrapolate this so easily to social media alienation today.
Oh, for sure.
Think about people who build their entire online persona around constantly critiquing mainstream culture, mocking influencers, and acting intellectually superior to the masses.
The ultimate contrarians.
Right. But secretly, they are obsessively checking their own analytics, desperate for likes and views from the very masses they are mocking. We want to be seen and validated by the societal structures we complain about.
And it leads to a deep, profound sense of isolation when our main character syndrome is met with total, scrolling indifference.
That indifference crushes him. The dinner completely shatters his fragile ego. And in his desperate, frantic need to regain a sense of power and superiority after being utterly humiliated, he sets off a chain of events that leads to the true emotional climax of the novel.
The tragedy of Liza.
Yes. If we connect this to the bigger picture, his need to exert power over anyone drives him to a brothel where he meets Liza.
Let's spend some real time on this, because the encounter with Liza is where the philosophical theories become flesh and blood, and it is devastating.
It's a heartbreaking sequence.
Following the dinner, his peers leave to go to a brothel. He follows them, actively hoping to pick a physical fight, to literally slap Zverkov in the face and finally get his dramatic romantic showdown.
But he misses them.
Yeah, he arrives too late. They've already gone into the back rooms. Instead, he is introduced to Liza, a young, newly arrived prostitute. She is vulnerable, she is fresh from the provinces, and she is at the very beginning of what will likely be a very dark path.
Very fragile.
And the underground man, feeling totally crushed and powerless from the dinner, looks at this vulnerable girl and sees an opportunity.
He sees an opportunity to play God. The mechanism here is pure psychological displacement. He couldn't dominate Zverkov, so he will dominate Liza.
He needs a win.
Exactly. To regain his sense of superiority, he decides to save her, but he does it through cruelty. He gives Liza a devastating, highly articulate, and ruthlessly realistic speech about her future.
He holds nothing back.
He doesn't offer comfort or practical help. He uses his massive intellect to break down exactly what awaits her. Disease, abandonment by everyone who claims to care about her, dying alone in a damp, freezing cellar, and being buried in the wet mud where no one will ever remember her name.
He paints this horrifying cinematic picture of her doom, and it works. It completely breaks her.
She's shattered.
She weeps uncontrollably. She is terrified, stripped of whatever illusions she had left. And how does the underground man feel? He feels victorious.
He feels powerful.
He successfully manipulated a human being. He used words to crush someone's soul, and therefore, he has power. He feels like a noble savior who has awakened her to the tragic reality of life.
So twisted.
High on this twisted sense of power and romantic grandeur, he gives her his home address, acting like a benefactor, and leaves.
But then the unforgiving reality of the physical world intrudes on his intellectual fantasy.
Right, because she actually shows up.
Days later, Liza actually shows up at his squalid apartment.
Yeah.
And he is utterly terrified.
Why?
Because when she arrives, he isn't playing the role of the grand, wealthy philosopher. She walks in right in the middle of a pathetic, screaming argument between him and his elderly servant, Apollon, over a few rubles.
Oh, no.
He is wearing a ratty dressing gown. His apartment is a mess. His mask of the noble, detached savior is instantly stripped away by the humiliating reality of his poverty and his petty domestic squalor.
He is caught. The fantasy is dead. He is humiliated that she sees him like this. And in this moment, his psychological defenses completely collapse.
He just breaks.
In what might be the only completely honest, unguarded moment he has in the entire book, he breaks down in front of her. He weeps. He confesses everything.
A rare moment of truth.
He tells her that he is a fraud, a spiteful, pathetic man. He admits the horrific truth that he only spoke to her that night, only painted that terrible picture of her future to humiliate her because he had been humiliated at the dinner. He strips his own soul bare.
And this is the pivotal moment of the entire novel. This is where the philosophy of the underground faces its ultimate test.
How does she react?
How does Liza react to this confession? A rationalist might say she should be angry, that she should realize he is toxic, and leave to protect her own self-interest.
Which would make sense.
But instead, Liza responds with pure, unselfish, irrational compassion. She understands his profound pain. She sees the broken, weeping man underneath the spite. She approaches him and embraces him. She offers him genuine human connection and unconditional love.
She offers him a way out of the underground. But this genuine love absolutely terrifies him, doesn't it?
It terrifies him more than anything else in the world. We have to analyze why love is so threatening to the hyperconscious mind.
Okay, why is it?
Love requires vulnerability. It requires dropping the ego, stepping out of the defensive fortress of the underground, and accepting one's flaws in the presence of another person.
Right.
Most importantly, love requires horizontal equality. Two people standing on the same ground. And the underground man cannot handle equality. He has spent his entire life only understanding relationships in terms of vertical power dynamics.
Like someone has to be on top.
Either he is a tyrant dominating someone, or he's a victim being humiliated by someone above him. Equality does not compute.
So, faced with this terrifying prospect of true intimacy and equality, what does he do? He commits the final, ultimate, unforgivable cruelty.
The absolute worst thing he could do.
To reassert his dominance, to destroy the connection and rebuild his isolated ego, he waits until she is leaving, and he forcefully hands her a 5-ruble note.
The specific mechanism of the 5-ruble note is essential to understand. Why money?
To insult her.
Because by paying her, he instantly reestablishes the vertical hierarchy. He destroys the emotional, spiritual connection they just shared and forcefully reduces the entire encounter back to a cheap commercial transaction.
Oh, that's brutal.
He reduces her back to a prostitute and elevates himself back to a paying customer. He uses the money as a weapon to sever the bond of equality because his isolation is safer than the risk of being loved.
It is the most devastating, gut-wrenching act in the novel. And Liza's reaction is quietly profound. She doesn't yell, she doesn't throw it at him.
No, she's beyond that.
She just quietly leaves the money on a table, unnoticed by him at first, and walks out into the wet snow forever.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the ultimate philosophical tragedy of the underground man and of the hyper-conscious individual. He was offered a bridge to the surface world.
A real chance at salvation.
He was offered salvation through genuine human connection. But he actively chose the underground. He chose his pride, his spite, and his total isolation because it allowed him to remain in control.
He couldn't let go.
He chose to be a lonely, miserable master of his own private hell rather than a vulnerable, equal participant in the real, unpredictable world of human life.
And the mental gymnastics he does afterward to justify this cowardice are astounding. He literally runs out after her into the snow, but he stops himself.
He turns back.
He doesn't go after her. Instead, he rationalizes his cruelty. He tells himself that the insult of the money will actually make her stronger.
That's his twisted logic.
He convinces his hyperactive brain that his cruelty was actually a twisted form of purification for her soul. He spins this elaborate philosophical web to convince himself that ruining this connection was actually a noble act.
He has to lie to himself.
The overthinking, the spinning of the wheels, it just never ever stops. He returns to his damp room, doomed to just keep writing his memoirs in endless circles.
And this brings us to the profound mirror Dostoevsky's holding up to the modern soul. The underground man is not just a bizarre fictional outlier or a caricature of a 19th century intellectual.
No, he's very real.
He is the inevitable result of an over-intellectualized, alienated society. He represents the part of all of us that hides behind irony, hypercriticism, and intellectual superiority to avoid the terrifying, messy risk of truly living, acting, and loving.
His failure isn't a failure of intelligence. I mean, he is undeniably the smartest person in the book. He sees through every illusion society has.
But it doesn't save him.
No, his failure is a failure of courage. His mind built a fortress so strong, so perfectly defended by logic and cynicism, that his own heart could not escape it.
A self-made prison.
So what does this all mean for us? You, listening right now, have to turn the mirror on yourself. How often do you reject a genuine opportunity, a real relationship, or a new, unpredictable path because you are secretly terrified of failing or terrified of the vulnerability it requires?
That's the real question.
How often do you prefer the familiar, safe comfort of your own cynical complaints over the terrifying vulnerability of actually trying to build something real?
It's a profound, uncomfortable challenge. We started this deep dive with the theoretical rejection of the Crystal Palace. The rejection of engineered happiness in favor of chaotic free will.
Right, smashing the glass.
But we end with the tragic, real-world rejection of Liza, the rejection of love in favor of control. The underground man fought so desperately to prove to the rationalists that he had free will. But when he was finally given the chance to use it, he used that free will to lock the door of his own prison.
Wow.
He proved he was free, but he died inside.
It is an incredibly heavy, thought-provoking journey. But before we wrap up today's exploration, I want to leave you with one final, lingering thought experiment to mull over on your own.
Okay, let's hear it.
We spend a lot of time talking about the Crystal Palace of the 19th century, the ultimate utopian spreadsheet. But imagine modern equivalent. Imagine a near-future artificial intelligence that can perfectly, flawlessly map your brain chemistry and your psychological profile.
Like an ultimate algorithm.
Exactly. An algorithm that takes total control of your life and matches you with the absolute perfect partner, curates the perfect career, and guarantees with absolute mathematical certainty that you will never feel sad, bored, or rejected ever again. Absolute engineered perfection.
Sounds tempting.
But to enter this paradise, to plug into this algorithm, you must sign a contract surrendering your right to ever make a mistake. You surrender your right to act irrationally, to throw a tantrum, or to self-sabotage.
You give up your freedom.
Your agency, your chaotic human unpredictability is permanently handed over to the machine. Knowing what you know now about the underground man, about the deep, sometimes destructive human craving for chaos and the ownership of our own suffering, would you sign that contract?
That is the ultimate question.
Or would you smash the machine, embrace the pain, and choose the wet snow just to prove you are alive? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep exploring.